This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University, and today I wanted to talk about IBTC, UBTC, All BTC. Bitcoin obviously up sharply over the past 24 hours, hitting levels of 34,000, 35,000, which are levels that it hasn't seen in approximately 100 years. This is on the news that BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF now has a ticker, which is IBTC, and it has appeared on the DTCC website. That's the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation website where shares are registered, and it's the DTCC that provides post-trade clearance and settlement for the NASDAQ. So this is something that is almost certainly going to happen. It hasn't been approved by the SEC yet, but it could be a question of hours, days, or weeks before it's approved. At the same time, we're seeing Bitcoin's dominance skyrocketing, hitting its highest level against Ethereum since April of 2021 as Ethereum goes off a cliff against Bitcoin. What was expected to be the flippening after ETH's merge has certainly turned into the floppening. We even see XRP trading back at levels it was trading at before its good legal news over the summer. So everything continues to lose value against Bitcoin, as you would expect. But what I wanted to focus on in this video is a little bit more on this FinCEN news, the major attack on Bitcoin, which I'll link to in the description notes below if you didn't see yesterday's video. This is a proposal by an agency under the US Treasury, FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, in which they want to criminalize regular Bitcoin activity. And they're trying to classify even regular Bitcoin transactions as something like mixing or coin laundering. So be sure to watch yesterday's video about that. I wanted to respond to a number of the comments that I thought were quite smart from yesterday's video. Zale370 said the notion that Bitcoin, a decentralized currency, can be contained within the borders of any single nation is out of touch. It's as impractical as claiming you'll penalize anyone on earth for using spoken language. It's an endeavor that fundamentally misunderstands the global and decentralized essence of the subject. And I think that's true, but what I was arguing in that video, and I'll argue again today, is that there will still be Bitcoin martyrs. The best way to slow down a movement like Bitcoin, and make no mistake about it, Bitcoin is software, it's a network, but it's also fundamentally a social movement. And the best way to slow down a social movement is just to jail a few high-profile people, unfortunately, in order to scare everyone else into compliance. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I just ask you to hit that subscribe button. In terms of scaring people into compliance, this is certainly what we saw with Ross Ulbricht, who was given a very, very harsh sentence for his Silk Road website, and this certainly discouraged a lot of people from trying something similar. Another response, a common response to yesterday's video, was like this one: if only we had privacy by default, alternatives that don't require mixing, coinjoins, and other fragile gymnastics to keep our financial activities to ourselves and completely invisible to third parties. And this was, of course, an argument for the privacy cryptocurrency Monero, which we've covered extensively on this channel. This picture looks really nice. It looks like a cowboy in freedom. When you actually see what's happening to people who own Monero, they're continuing to get poorer and poorer relative to people who own Bitcoin, as I've been saying they would over the past 12 months. Why do Monero proponents never discuss the trade-offs? It's wonderful to have a graphic like this, but there are trade-offs that Monero takes. It's true that Monero is much more private at the base layer than Bitcoin, but that means that it's also much more prone to unnoticed inflation bugs, as we've discussed before. And also the other question is, do you really want to have obscurity at the heart of your ledger, at the heart of your monetary system? Or do you want to have do you want to have transparency like the Bitcoin blockchain has? Privacy can always be handled at higher layers, and this is how money scales. Monero ring signatures, which are used to enforce privacy, are really cool, but they're also quite bulky, and they contribute to blockchain bloat. Larger blockchains means that fewer people have the hardware and internet bandwidth to download the blockchain, and the processing power as well to validate that the consensus rules are being followed. And so this means you have less decentralization when you have really large, bulky blockchains. And we can see how large Monero's problem is when we compare its market cap and its blockchain size to Bitcoin's. Bitcoin's market cap after this recent rally is $674 billion. The blockchain size, which is all the transactions since 2009, is only 591 gigs. By contrast, Monero's market cap is just a tiny fraction of Bitcoin's at 2.9 billion. It really hasn't gone anywhere. And Monero's blockchain size is quite large compared to Bitcoin's blockchain size. of Monero's blockchain size, 119 gigs. And this is for a currency that doesn't have nearly the adoption that Bitcoin does. And it's also a much younger currency. It hasn't been around since 2009. So we can see the blockchain bloat problem that Monero has. And you can imagine how large the Monero blockchain would become if Monero adoption, as measured by market cap, were as high as Bitcoin adoption. The Monero blockchain would be completely unwieldy both to download and to verify, especially for people living in developing nations. So when you see nice graphics from Monero people like this is what they're leaving out. If you want to check the blockchain growth of Monero, I'll link to this in the description notes below. First, a few more comments. This was from WolfView, attached to yesterday's video. Hi Matthew, I'm flabbergasted. This news does not sound good. This will force people to leave the US, the quote-unquote land of opportunities, turns it into a land of dictatorial law, own nothing and be happy. I'm so sad. My response was, I hope that American Bitcoiners can choose instead to stay and stand up for their rights. This FinCEN regulation, proposed regulation, as we said yesterday, clearly violates both the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment and is unconstitutional, just as the Patriot Act is unconstitutional, just as the Bank Secrecy Act is unconstitutional. Unfortunately, those previous two acts have stood, and so we're going to have to really fight FinCEN on this one as hard as we can. But I did say I hope that American Bitcoiners choose to stay and stand up for their rights. The government cannot jail millions of Bitcoiners. It's not practical. Fusion 9619 saying, if you're thinking of going, in other words, leaving the US like I am, you should go now. By the time we're sure we have to go, it will be too late. We can do a lot of good outside America, help other people learn Bitcoin, organize however we can to accept and help American refugees. It'll take time to get ready for these things. Go now, don't delay anymore. And my response to Fusion 9619 was yes, but the real question is where to go. So much of the globe is highly unstable politically. El Salvador sounds nice, but it can easily be invaded and shut down by the U.S. military. Similar discussion with Superhero Armory Channel. Matthew, have you ever considered moving out of the U.S. to a country not ruled by tyrants? I've been seriously debating it myself since I have the financial ability to easily do so. I suspect many of your subscribers have also considered doing the same. America has morphed into a third world rotting corpse. It is no longer a free country, and I'd argue that is one of the most corrupt on earth, where legalized theft, taxation, and civil asset forfeiture have become normal. Why would any wealthy person choose to stay here? Bitcoiners will likely be persecuted once this stuff hits the fan, and I can see no benefit of staying on board a sinking ship. Any thoughts? My response to him, which I want to share with all of you, yes, I think about it every day, but this is my home. It is also a really large country that offers a large anonymity set, or at least a partial anonymity set, and many places to hide, at least partially, from the collapse. El Salvador looks great, but the U.S. could end the Bitcoin experiment there with a single cruise missile. U.S. government is a rotting corpse, but many Americans, the people of this country, retain the old-fashioned virtues of hard work and just wanting to be left alone by their government. The American spirit of entrepreneurship, self-defense, and freedom is not dead yet. Central and South American countries do not have a good track record when it comes to political stability and violent revolutions, not to mention currency devaluations, which at least you're protected from if you own some Bitcoin. But the social chaos that it can create is definitely something you want to avoid. Australia, and I might have added New Zealand as well, where a lot of billionaires used to have their safe nuclear lockers. Australia and New Zealand are open-air concentration camps. Please forgive me, my Australian subscribers. Japan and Singapore are nice places, but awfully close to China. What are your thoughts? So that was my response. I really love this country, and I want to stay. And I think that it can be saved. This is Michael2275. I've already decided that if they ban real BTC, I'd rather leave than give up my BTC. We're talking about where to go. And Basic Beach Community 1 said, somewhere moderate with a decent military and laws. Where are most expats living? Portugal, Spain, Germany, Chile, Ecuador, Philippines. And my response to Basic Beach Community 1 was that EU countries are entirely dependent on U.S. energy at the margins and U.S. military protection, the nuclear umbrella that the U.S. extends to Western Europe. Also, the EU is even more hostile to Bitcoin than the U.S. government. So these are the difficult questions. If you're not American, you may be amused watching this sort of discussion, but I think it is important to look ahead and to sort of game out what we think is going to happen. Michael from outside the U.S. Said, who cares about what the U.S. government does to Bitcoin? 96% of the world is not American. The more you guys screw up, the better for Bitcoin's decentralization. That's true at a very superficial level. But as I responded, I think that the U.S. government has the ability to wield its noxious influence on more than 4% of the world, as we clearly see and have seen over the past few decades. U.S. government financial regulations extend everywhere and are frequently enforced overseas as well. So this is the problem that's not quite as simple as Michael says that it is. I want to conclude on a more hopeful note, though. Holding BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, IBTC, this is the warning, does not give you monetary freedom or self-sovereignty. Instead, and this is very important to note, and I'm sure I'm going to be repeating this a lot on the channel during the next bull market as we get a lot of new subscribers, holding IBTC instead makes you dependent on Charles Schwab or whoever your brokerage is held with, holding your IBTC, BlackRock, which manages your IBTC, and then Coinbase that hopefully holds some actual BTC that backs your IBTC. One phone call from the government, wherever you are, can instantly freeze or confiscate your IBTC. So by contrast, though, if you hold BTC, the real Bitcoin, you can take it anywhere, you can store it in your brain, you can send it to anyone without needing to ask permission, and you cannot be rugged as you can if you're holding your Bitcoin with a custodian or some other counterparty. BlackRock pumping IBTC, this is the good news, also enriches sovereign BTC holders who are smart enough to avoid ETFs and to hold the real thing instead, to hold BTC. Bitcoin pumping increases sovereign Bitcoin holders' financial power as they become wealthier, and thus their potential political influence. And Bitcoiners' wealth and their coming wealth gives them optionality. Do you flee the country with a brain wallet, whatever country you're in, or do you stay and fight, non-violently, of course, for your human rights or for your constitutional rights? You can extend this beyond my America-centric perspective. Are you going to stay where you are, or are you going to flee somewhere else? You really have to think about how things are going to develop, and I think they're going to develop quite rapidly as Bitcoin appreciates. And when it hits the market cap of gold, which is quite likely in this run, then you're going to see the geopolitical shenanigans and the persecution really begin. So you need to have a plan, and it's very helpful to think through these things together, I think. So please leave a comment in the comment section below about the best place to hide out from the collapse of the global financial systems. This sounds a little bit doomer, but we are seeing the wheels coming off of the US dollar system, the Fed losing control of the long end of the curve, and what we're about to see in the coming months, I believe, is massive, massive money printing. It's going to cause very high inflation, and it's going to cause a lot of social problems and social chaos. So we really need to be prepared for this, while at the same time we're enjoying being vindicated and being right about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's purchasing power appreciating. All the bears who said we were going to 15K or 10K or 5K, clearly completely wrong and don't even understand simple capital flows, as we're seeing from BlackRock. And we're just getting started. I think there's a very strong possibility that we see new highs on Bitcoin even before the end of 2023. This is not completely out of the question. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.